Evolution of Snotlout Jorgenson. Following, Snotlout reappears in the 2010 first animated short, Legend of the Bone Napper Dragon, again in a main role, voiced by Jonah Hill. At the beginning, he helps put out a fire in Gobber's house, after which Gobber tells everyone that a dragon, Bone Napper, hunted him and caused a fire, with no one taking him seriously. Then, he and others decided to join Gobber on a sail trip to find the dragon, but soon crashed on rocks on a distant island due to Gobber's captivating storytelling, where they actually discovered the dragon, who initially wanted to kill them, but then became friendly and thankful toward Gobber and the group for returning his missing bone, as well as gave them a hand in flying back home on his back. Snotlout Gary Jorgenson, or just Snotlout, makes his debut in the 2010 movie How to Train Your Dragon, which is the first movie in the franchise, loosely based on the first book by Cressida Cowell with the same name, as one of the main characters, voiced by Jonah Hill. Here, he appears as a young male Viking, who always wears his helmet with spiral sheep horns, his tunic tucked in his pants with open stitching at the chest, and a black fur vest over it, dark gray bracers on his arms, and matching fur boots, in addition to his weapons of choice varying from a mace to a hammer. He can be arrogant and prone to grandiose delusions of perfection, popularity, and attractiveness, considering himself a macho and having crushes on every girl around, mostly for shallow reasons, which he often expresses openly by flirting with them, but always ending up ignored in the end. Despite his bragging, however, his pride is not entirely baseless, since he's quite a good fighter and much smarter than he might be perceived initially, as well as a good and loyal friend. In the story, he first appears protecting his village from the attack by dragons, and soon also mocking the son of the village's chief, Hiccup, due to his lack of fighting skills, making him a pariah in everyone's eyes. Then, this continues during their dragon combat training, in which, despite them training together, they still treat him poorly, but after Hiccup succeeds and manages to become the best student and the most skillful dragon tamer, Snotlout slowly but surely starts to change his attitude toward him and even befriends him, showing his respect and honest fascination. This at the end culminates in him and their friends helping Hiccup to defeat a giant dragon, the Red Death, with the assistance of their new dragon friends, with his dragon being Hookfang, of the species Monstrous Nightmare, which eventually leads to a diametric change in the relationship between the dragons and humans, beginning a new chapter of their mutual and peaceful cohabitation. Then, Snotlout cameos in the 2011 animated short Book of Dragons, first in the flashback from the first movie, then in the Great Hall, reading the Book of Dragons with the others, and then in the book itself, riding his dragon Hookfang, and also exploring his species' Monstrous Nightmare, as well as different ways of taming and befriending him. Snotlout appears next in a minor role in the 2011 animated short Gift of the Night Fury, set shortly after the first movie, first preparing for the Snuggletog Festival designed to commemorate how the war between the Vikings and the dragons came to an end, but soon getting interrupted by all the dragons suddenly flying away, with no one knowing what to do. While looking for ways to continue the celebration, Snotlout decides to impress Astrid and taste her new cooking experiment, Yucknog, leaving him disgusted and nauseated as a result, and then also distributing one dragon's newly discovered eggs into people's houses to surprise them, which instead leads to all the houses exploding, with Snotlout actually enjoying the result. At the end, after Hiccup and all the dragons return back to the village, Snotlout happily reunites with Hookfang and plays with his offspring, celebrating their first Snuggletog together. Snotlout appears next in the first animated TV show in the franchise, Dragons, Riders of Berk, which is set in between the first movie and its sequel, again in a main role, now voiced by Zach Perlman. In the series, he and his friends continue to explore the nature of their dragons, as well as ways of taming and training them, as shown in the episode How to Start a Dragon Academy, where they create a dragon training academy to reach this very goal, as well as depicting the closeness of Snotlout and Hookfang's relationship, when, for instance, Hookfang's life gets in danger in the episode Viking for Hire, due to him starting to act erratically and thus pose a danger to Berk, prompting Stoic and Gobber to want to put him down. Snotlout gets genuinely distraught at the thought of losing Hookfang, and so swallows his pride and asks Hiccup for help, ultimately discovering that Hookfang had a bad tooth that was causing him pain, and then, after removing it, his behavior returns to normal, and Snotlout joyously hugs him as a result. Additionally, a little bit of his personal story and family dynamic gets revealed, specifically, that he's shown to deeply respect his father, Spitelout, despite their fairly rocky relationship, which also causes him to be quite fearful of disappointing him and constantly desiring to earn his approval, while he puts huge amounts of pressure on Snotlout, which could explain his overall grandiose desires to look and be the best, as was depicted in the episode Thawfest, in which, during the Thawfest games, Spitelout continued to pressure Snotlout, even though he won all the previous games, like all of his family, showing his very many medals to prove this, because he didn't want Snotlout to be the first one of their family to ever lose the game, causing him a lot of anxiety as a result. But at the end, after Hiccup allows Snotlout to win, Spitelout is shown to be very proud of his son, letting him sit on his shoulder while he and the crowd cheer for him, showing that he does love and care for him. Following, Snotlout appears in the 2012 live-action arena show adaptation of the first movie, How to Train Your Dragon, Live Spectacular, as one of the main characters in his original role, portrayed by Godefroy Riegwart. Snotlout reappears then in the second animated TV show, Dragons Defenders of Berk, as one of the main characters. In the series, he and his friends continue to practice in the academy and also obtain newer dragon fighting skills to protect their village, people, and dragons themselves against their various new opponents on their path. As shown in the episode Tunnel Vision, where he and his friends discover a new dragon subspecies, the Screaming Death, which threatens the safety and well-being of the village, and after uniting together successfully, manage to drive it and its hatchlings away. Also, he's still shown to spend quite a lot of his time flirting with Astrid, who at best continues to ignore him and at worst beats him up for it or makes disingenuous jokes, pretending to like him back in an overly sweet manner. Regarding his relationship with Hookfang, who's very much like his owner despite their mutual training, he is still often acting recklessly, and may also seem to disrespect Snotlout at times, teasing him by slapping or biting him. But actually, deep down, Hookfang does indeed love Snotlout and only does what he does in order to either get back at him or conceal his affection for him, as demonstrated in the episode Race to Fireworm Island, where both of them were willing to risk their lives to protect each other from the Fireworm Queen, which shows that the two are very close, even if they don't always show or admit it openly. In the 2014 animated short Dawn of the Dragon Racers, which is set several years before the events of the sequel, Snotlout appears, voiced by Zach Perlman, first competing and practicing catching sheep for the annual dragon race with his friends, and then also boasting that he had created the sport since he even built the sheep launcher for shooting sheep into the air, with Hiccup and Astrid quickly disagreeing, which prompts everyone to try and recall the past, during which they remembered their playing and competing experience of the first race, in which Snotlout teamed with the twins, Toughnut and Roughnut, against Hiccup and Astrid until he crashed into Astrid while they were trying to get the same sheep, breaking her arm in the process, with him trying to carelessly fly away with the sheep but then running into a branch and getting knocked off Hookfang instead. However, after they decided to continue racing, now against Hiccup and Fishlegs, Snotlout and the twins came to the finishing point and thought they managed to win when they got the black sheep, but it actually got revealed that they had cheated by repainting one of the sheep into black and thus lost the match to Hiccup and Fishlegs. At the end, after the flashback, they also found out that it was Toughnut who technically created the whole game, which causes Snotlout to get depressed, thinking he didn't actually do anything, with Hiccup reminding him that he was the one who cheated and that was his special input, which very much cheered him. Following, Snotlout appears in the 2014 movie sequel, How to Train Your Dragon 2, happening 5 years after the events of the first movie, as a secondary protagonist, voiced by Jonah Hill. Here, he appears grown up to a young adult, both physically and mentally, seeming to be less arrogant and obnoxious, having some facial hair, still wearing the same helmet, but also a leather green-blue tunic with a bearskin vest over it, spiky emblazoned brown bracers and boots, as well as a new weapon, which is his big stone hammer. Also, by the time of the movie, he, apparently, had already given up on Astrid as she was officially with Hiccup and started to hit on Roughnut instead, even calling her his princess and getting upset when she paid attention to someone else and clearly showed her disinterest in him. In the story, he appears first taking part in their traditional dragon racing competition, with his colors being red and yellow, with his attitude clearly changed, as now he participates more for the fun of it rather than for strictly winning, as he helps Roughnut along the way and is also not sad when Astrid wins the race. Soon, however, he and others learn about a new and serious threat to them and all the dragons, which comes from a megalomaniacal and cruel dragon hunter, Drago Bloodfist, who wants to take hold of all the dragons and rule over the whole world, even falling prey to him and his henchmen later on their investigating mission, with Drago taking away their dragons, causing Snotlout and others much pain. Then, after getting freed and reuniting with their dragons for a short time, they meet with Bloodfist face to face and witness the death of Stoic, after which Snotlout and all the others are shown totally devastated and crying. At the end, however, through working together, he, Hiccup, and even all the other dragons come together and defeat Bloodfist and his allies, cheering happily afterwards, with Snotlout running straight towards Hookfang right past Roughnut, showing the strength of their friendship above all else, and then also getting excited and praising Hiccup for becoming their new chief. In the animated TV series Dragon's Race to the Edge, which is set between the first show and How to Train Your Dragon 2, Snotlout reappears in a main role, voiced again by Zach Perlman. In the story, Snotlout and others have now begun to discover new places and locations, as well as various species of dragons unknown to them before who inhabit them, thereby increasing their knowledge base and helping them coexist better, all the while going through many new challenges to achieve this goal. Also, throughout the series, Snotlout and Hiccup in particular, despite continuing to bicker once in a while, seem to have resolved their differences and points of friction, and become very good and understanding friends, with even more respect for one another. Even if Snotlout expresses his disagreement with most of Hiccup's plans, he still ends up following them anyway, respecting his leadership. He's also shown to be a competent leader on many occasions himself, being good at battle tactics and able to inspire the other riders into following him. As shown in the episode Dawn of Destruction, he is able to lead the twins and Fishlegs, who are not the best riders, in mounting an effective defense of the edge against Singtails, medium-sized Stoker-class dragons, only failing because of their huge numbers, which demonstrates his advanced tactical and leadership skills. Then, Snotlout appears in the 2019 animated movie How to Train Your Dragon: The Hidden World, set 1 year after the previous movie, as one of the secondary characters voiced by Jonah Hill. Here, he appears as a fully grown-up man, wearing armor made from Hook Fang's scales, with a cape and sharp blades on his arms as well as his helmet, but with much larger horns. Surprisingly, he has now begun hitting on Hiccup's mom, Valka, much to her amusement, and Hiccup and Astrid's cringe, even saying that he's next in line to become the chief after Hiccup because he's her favorite. And even though he doesn't end up in a romantic relationship with her, he does earn her respect at the end of the movie. In the story, after they discover that their village was attacked by the next serious threat on their way, Grimmel the Grizzly, a ruthless dragon hunter, they all try to find a new safe location with all the dragon population alongside them, as well as later battling with Grimmel and his henchmen and managing to defeat him successfully. However, despite the joyful moment of them reuniting in peace with their dragons, they soon realize that dragons will never be safe in the human world, and that it would be best for them to relocate to the hidden world alone, far from any humans, causing Snotlout and all the others a strong heartache by the fact that they would need to set the dragons free and say goodbye forever, with him crying after seeing Hook Fang fly off to the hidden world. At the end, Snotlout is also shown crying, but now out of happiness and pride for Hiccup and Astrid marrying during their wedding ceremony. Following, Snotlout cameos in the 2019 Christmas special, Snuggletog, appearing in Hiccup and Astrid's home before celebrating Snuggletog, with him and his friends ending up drinking soup, spitting it on the screen, and disappearing. Next, Snotlout appears in the 2019 animated short How to Train Your Dragon: Homecoming, set 10 years after the previous movie, in a minor role, voiced by Zach Perlman. First, he's seen at the beginning, as everyone prepares to celebrate the yearly Snuggletog festival, drinking Yuck Nog with Tough Nut. Then, during the newly created stage play for the holiday, serving as a teleprompter operator, but then trying to save the stage during its accidental incineration. Finally, Snotlout reappears in the 2025 first live-action movie adaptation of the original story, How to Train Your Dragon, again in a main role, portrayed by Gabriel Howell. Here, he's mainly presented very similarly to the original, both in terms of personality and physical appearance, but also shown to change his attire throughout the story and wear a necklace, with some of his lines and actions modified, while remaining basically the same, like when he mocks Hiccup, specifically for his unusual name, until he points out that his name is even worse. He also frequently interacts with his father Spitelout in the course of the movie, despite not having the same storyline as in the first story. Additionally, during their dragon training, when Hiccup progresses beyond everyone, Snotlout is initially behaving more like he is confused and in disbelief rather than impressed. But eventually he still gets proud of him and becomes his fan,